Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. Tower Talk Business Radio brings you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation, including expert consultants and small business owners who have found success, but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their first-hand experience. And now, let's get down to business with Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation.
And welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, CEO of Keeper of the Brand Marketing and Digital Agency, along with my co-host, Ray Schwetz, AVP of NEFCU. And we focus on bringing the premier resource for business and entrepreneurship to Long Island. Ray and I bring you weekly business advice, tip, tools, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we interview the top business leaders in the industry. But first, let's jump into Success Chat. You know, everyone's searching for meaning and purpose. Millennials are the young generation shaping our future. So I'm so happy today to welcome our guest that's going to provide us with business empowerment, Daniel Lloyd, founder and president of Minority Millennials, Inc.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Daniel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Daniel is a social entrepreneur with experience in establishing enterprises aimed at solving societal changes and challenges through the inclusive ideation and representation. Daniel founded Minority Millennials, a 501c3 non-for-profit organization right here on our peninsula of Long Island, currently bridging the gap between policy and culture. Its mission focuses on tackling disempowering narratives around minority communities and mobilizing millennials with the tools needed to become the next generation of change makers in public policy. Presently in his capacity as Associate Director of Long Island Citizens for Community Values, Daniel designs solution-based programs that work to protect children and families and the digital age, spanning topics such as screen time management, digital dependency, and cyberbullying. Daniel holds a bachelor's degree of science in finance from Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and MBA in global management from Westwood College. He believes that the pursuit of lifelong learning is critical to leadership. Daniel, now, what started you, what vision did you have for Minority Millennials, and how did you start this organization?
Yeah, so just briefly, I'm a native Long Islander. I'm from Wyandanch, but upon graduation, I wanted to get as far away from Long Island as possible. And so I got as far as across the bridge, right, in Newark, New Jersey. And I was gone for 10 years, but I learned a lot about social activism and just the influence that millennials had in the change and the, quote-unquote, gentrification of downtown Newark. They were able to make sure the essence and the traditions and the history of Newark was sustained while it grew and expanded with cultural diversity and new people moving in and new companies moving in. So it kept a pure essence. When I moved back to Long Island in 2016, my actual radio label, it dissolved, it failed. So I was like depressed. I just got married and I moved back home to Wyandanch. And I saw this massive development going on in Wyandanch Rising, and I couldn't believe it. And as I started asking questions and trying to figure out what was going on, I realized that there was a huge investment into Long Island, specifically Central Long Island and Wyandanch and underserved communities. But when I asked my colleagues and my peers and my friends, like, do you know what's going on? How can we get involved? If there's a huge investment going on, that means that there's, parallel projects that we can get. No one had any interest.
Wow.
No one had any idea of what was going on or how to get involved. And so that's how we kind of came up with who are we and what are we trying to represent and really what's our demographic. And by definition, Minority Millennials is who we are. We are a future majority here in Long Island, believe it or not.
Now, really, how do you tap into those Minority Millennials? Where do you find them? How do you recruit?
Well, it's really in the beginning, which is word of mouth. Just kind of going through my circle of influence and networks and peers and mentors and just really saying, are you interested in getting involved with the development of Long Island? This is a great place to be right now. Kind of changing that rhetoric that everyone's saying Long Island is boring, it's dry. if it is all those things, that means that we have the opportunity to develop and build whatever we want to see if we have the right avocation and the right influence. And so then we started posting certain pictures on Instagram through Minority Millennials, doing a couple of small events, just getting interest. And really word of mouth and social media is truly effective here on Long Island specifically, because there are a lot of people that are interested in policy, so to say. Mm-hmm. They just don't really understand maybe what that means, or also is it appealing? You know, like that's what Minority Millennials is really trying to do, redefine what policy is to make it more appealing to Long Island specifically.
Now, can you tell us about some of your upcoming projects or your key thrusts for Minority Millennials?
Yeah, so 2018 was really our first year. We established in October 2017. So going into 2018 was really just kind of like guerrilla style marketing, just getting people aware of the name, getting people interested in our events. So we focused on entrepreneurial diversity because by 2050, 2 in 3 people on Long Island will be people of color. And so if there's not the proper human capital investment into that demographic, by 2050, Long Island is not going to be able to sustain the way it has been, which is really the predominant known suburbia in the country, really the world. And so we realized, though, that a lot of minority millennials that there's a lack of data for, we're not being represented in entrepreneurial investment, we're not being represented in policy, boards, and just representation. So now moving forward, we figured out that there's really 3 tiers to this. There's representation. There's not a minority millennial or even a millennial in that part on any type of board, county board, school board, town board. Nothing at all across the Long Island. The second thing is equity. So getting more data on how many minority millennials actually own homes, how many of us want to buy a home, and how many of us can attain that. Also through property, real estate, all the basic equitable options that we have. And the third thing is sustainability. So making sure that there is proper workforce development, economic development in the things that we're doing. And when the next generation, really Gen Z, is graduating. And really the fourth thing is we're doing a mentoring now. So we're partnering with a lot of towns to give this demographic, minority millennials, the time to invest into the next generation, Gen Z. So it will be a specific age group, 21 to 37, that's now mentoring the next generation.
What do you think are some of your biggest challenges here on Long Island?
Well, there's a huge disconnect between our elders and kind of their visions, but one thing I did realize is all they really care about is ownership. And so, let's say, for instance, apartments. A lot of our elders don't want apartments because they don't want to feel like they're living in the urban area. But if we can produce something like mini condos that we could afford, potentially maybe 2 or 3 years built into, then that's home ownership. So I've kind of figured out that's really their biggest, barrier of entry with us. But honestly, it's our peers. We're so competitive, or we're so disconnected regionally. It's like if we're trying to get more cohorts in Huntington, it's like I don't really deal with Babylon or Wyandanch people, or I don't deal with Brentwood people, I don't deal with Riverhead people. So it's kind of the biggest barrier right now is getting a shared consciousness of what we're doing. But also with millennials, it's kind of like, because we are peers, and honestly, not enough of us have stepped up to do something. It's like, do I want to support him, or do I want to do my own thing? And that's one thing I've noticed too. As we continue to develop like this energy, I'm noticing some people that were involved kind of want to just do their own thing now. So it comes with it, you know.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Donyshia Boston-Hill, and our guest today is Daniel Lloyd, founder and president of Minority Millennials, Inc. So, Daniel, do you think, that Long Island as a suburbia is the new urban suburban? That seems to be a hot topic out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are the first suburbia in human history, so we own that. And I think that we can, I don't know about the new urban suburban, but we can redefine suburbia. Why not? We created it. Levittown was the first suburbia, and so why can't we redefine what that is for us now? And we have to sustain.
Now, does public policy also include changing zoning, changing influence on...
110%.
Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more for our listeners?
Yeah, so what I like to say is, let's just say, keep it practical, especially with minority millennials. If we want to do some type of hip-hop festival, or we want to open up a lounge, that has to go through zoning, that has to go through a town board, or getting a permit. It is always going through some type of official or a town worker. And in order to get that, passed or approved, you have to be able to get the approval or the influence of who's making that decision. And so if we don't have people in those positions that understand the vision and trust what we're trying to do, let's say we are trying to bring a hip-hop festival to Tanner Park in Babylon, they have to know that they trust us, and also as vice versa. They understand that we're not trying to create some type of havoc in a town. It's just something culturally that we're looking to do, or even an Afro Fest or a soca event. That's all kind of permits, but even with zoning, if we want a lounge that maybe is open at 2 a.m. and wine ants rising, that's kind of zoning homes. Right now, Long Island doesn't allow two-family homes, specifically in Suffolk County and town of Babylon, depending on the entrances. But that's how a lot of us would sustain if we buy a home and then can rent it out. So that would be a huge zoning change for Long Island.
And that's really the challenge of keeping young people, millennials in particular, on Long Island, because they leave and they don't come back.
Yeah.
They can't afford the mortgage, and then the rents are so high. So
one thing on that real quick that I'm noticing, and this is a big thing that we're going to be focusing on in 2019, is research and advocacy. There's no data for minority millennials. So, and we represent minorities and millennials, but what I have been finding out in the last year is that there's a lot of data for millennials.
Okay.
And there is a brain drain for millennials across Long Island and the country. But minority millennials, we're actually not leaving. We're actually staying. And we're actually staying in our parents' homes.
Right.
Specifically, Black and Latino millennials. And not only that, a lot of us are working in retail, which is the biggest industry on Long Island and also pays the less. So there's a huge gap with, equity and just financial development, because if you look at it, we're really not going to be able to even own a mini condo or home in the next 10 to 20 years based on the $13 minimum wage that we get. And so that's a huge thing, is getting the data as to where are we really going as minority millennials, because millennials are leaving, yes, and they're taking their money with them, but minority millennials is a little different of a demographic.
Let's talk about your journey as an entrepreneur, because that is something that a lot of people out there are, contemplating on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. It's either retail or working in the digital space, in the tech space, but you decided to, forego going into the corporate world or going back into the corporate world into starting a non-for-profit.
Yeah.
What gave you that inspiration overall?
Yeah, well, I definitely would not recommend quitting a job and going into entrepreneurship, because I know that's a big thing right now. That's what I did, and I honestly put myself about 5 to 10 years back. I graduated a finance degree, and I had great jobs. I worked for Newark Housing. I worked for, Standard Chartered Bank, United Bank of Switzerland. Amazing, bank corporate jobs. And when I decided to start my record label with my college roommates, I actually quit my job, and it was the worst decision I ever could have made. And a lot of people seem to think that you just jump into it, there's no plan B, but that's not true. You can look at your job as the first investment into your entrepreneurial idea. And if you don't have any type of financial backing, you're always worried about survival rather than creation. And so, yes, I created, I had Hard Rock Records in 2010, and for the last 8 or 9 years, that was kind of like my heartbeat, but that failed. And so I had to figure out now, how am I taking all this experience and all this depression and all these relationships into something else? And that's where I really realized my passion is in helping and developing social solutions. I know that one of my skill sets is solving problems. So when I found out this idea of a social entrepreneur, I was like, oh, that's me. That's like a balance between creating something of your own, but then also providing a solution into the community that we're saying we have problems.
Right. So you're failing forward as an entrepreneur. Right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of dark times too. Still I have a lot of, there's a lot of ups and downs. Sometimes people think you're doing better than you are. It's like, no, I need help with this. And it's not an easy road. Absolutely not. And I always tell people, if you have a 9-to-5 job that's investing into your ideas, keep that.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Daniel Lloyd, founder and president of Minority Millennials. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm DB, Donyshia Boston-Hill, and our guest today is Daniel Lloyd, founder and president of Minority Millennials. Now, Daniel, can you give me 3 business topics or tips for entrepreneurs out there? You basically, number 1, you said, don't leave your day job. Any other tips?
Yeah, don't leave your day job. Use that as your first angel investor into your idea. The second thing is definitely understanding what value your idea is bringing to the community. A lot of times we just try to create something because we like it, but it's not bringing value to anybody. So you're constantly going to be trying to chase this passion that's not equitable to anyone. So definitely make sure that test the market. See if you have an idea, even if it's a t-shirt, is that certain type of t-shirt or logo or trademark something that people are already buying? Make it something that somebody, or people you don't know outside of your family is going to naturally want to support or buy. The last thing you want to do is keep trying to tug for support. That's the most inauthentic way to move your idea further. The third thing is, I think there's a huge free resource in podcasts. I am an avid podcast listener. There's thousands of them on your iPhone that's free. There's so many ideas and ventures and just mentoring and coaching you can get for no cost on podcasts that would help direct your mind when there's a lot of ups and downs as an entrepreneur, but you can get a lot of clarity from that free information that you would pay $2,500 a month for from a coach.
Now, what's your favorite podcast?
Jordan Harbinger's show. I think, he has a huge selection of guests, and he asks the best questions when you really need them. I'm also a huge fan of Noriega's Drink Champs, The Art of Charm, The Art of Manliness. I also love TED Talks, philosophy talks, history. There's hundreds. I have hundreds of them.
Yeah.
So
So TED Talks are really big. Talk to me a little bit about some of the events that you organize, because it's not a TED Talk per se, but you're bringing people together so that you can uplift them and create networks.
Yeah. So what we did in the past was a pitch night, like a Shark Tank style pitch night that focused on minority entrepreneurs from Suffolk County and Nassau County, and that was just bridging the gap between resources like the Huntington Launchpad, where there's investments going into ideas, but none of my peers and my colleagues even knew what a Huntington Launchpad was. I couldn't believe it. So we had over 100 people attend that event and really just be able to pitch their ideas and get insight from millionaires. All the people on the panel were basically millionaires or professionals that were able to give insight for free of how to get the idea to the next step. So we're going to be doing that every year.
Oh, that's great.
And just reaching out to to new entrepreneurs, specifically, again, Black and Latino. And I'll tell you this real quick. When we reached out to colleges and universities, what I'm noticing, especially Stony Brook, is that when you say minorities, obviously you're including Asians and Indians and whatnot. But if you ask for specifically Black or Latino, there wasn't any in the SBDC program in Stony Brook, and also certain schools like Suffolk and whatnot. So really establishing that development in Black and Latino ideas.
And let's transition a little bit to your management team, because they are, Black, Latino, of all different ethnicities. Where did you find them? Tell us a little bit about your team.
Yeah, well, my main, kind of like co-founder was my childhood friend, Andrew Aodiji. And so he has a lot of influence in Amityville. He was an all-Long Island basketball player. And so the natural lore at first was all of my basketball peers. We actually have more males in our organization, that's a community-based organization, than women at this point, which is uncommon, but it's a good thing, because we're able to bring a little different of an essence to the table. But we have been growing, interest from Long Island, Suffolk County women and sisters and whatnot. So right now we have about 5 to 10 people that are really closely as far as like on the board or making decisions with the next steps, and we're close to 100 members now. So it's diverse, it's across the board, and it just really just shows kind of the future of Long Island and its diversity, and who's interested and involved with it.
Now, what opportunities do you think are there for change on Long Island and just for millennials as a whole? Are they boots on the ground? Is it just social media? How are you reaching those people to spread your influence?
I mean, if I get your question correctly, I think the biggest thing is the opportunities that we're not involved in yet. So the first thing is absolutely policy. Again, there's not one minority millennial in any town board, school board, or the Suffolk County legislature. So there's a lot of talk about the future of Long Island. Meanwhile, the majority of the Long Island in 2050 is not present in any conversation. That's the first thing, is filling in those spaces. And then the second thing is getting involved with retail. There's still a lot of opportunities in new industries like beer. I haven't seen any, minority-owned business beer developments, and that's a huge market on Long Island right now. Coffee shops. Where's all these new establishments going on that we're not really involved in yet? So definitely getting involved in that. And millennials as well, not just minority millennials. It's getting into these new markets that we haven't really tapped our feet into. Also is the legalization of marijuana. When that happens, are we getting any investment into dispensaries on Long Island? That's going to be a huge market as well. So really just understanding all these new barriers of entry that are going to be open now because the technology has changed the landscape, as well as biotech too. That's a huge thing. We're actually partnering with Stony Brook on getting some minority millennials into these internships for free.
That's great. Now, it's easy for us to sit here and say, you know what, we're not in that, right? We're not, but how does someone listening or someone out there, how do they get involved? How do they find out about how do I get involved in public policy? What are my steps to take? Because I think that's the challenge, that people just don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think at first it's kind of like when we say that, everyone thinks it's automatically just to run. And there's a lot that's going into saying to run for a specific office. There's time and investment. The community has to trust you. The political party heads have to trust you, regardless if it's independent, Republican, or Democrat. So you have to get involved first locally. If it's even just going to your local library or going to a minority millennial event when we post it, really just seeing who's getting involved and who's active. It has to be something that is appealing to your mind and your heart, and be honest with yourself. Like, if this is something that you're really interested in, then come and, we post on @Minority Millennials across the board on Instagram and Facebook. And if it's not something that you're really looking to invest so much time into, maybe your experience or your industry or your skill can bring leverage or value to a political action or to policy change. So, it really just depends on where they're at mentally, honestly.
You're listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, and today our guest is Daniel Lloyd, founder and president of Minority Millennials. So, Daniel, let's get into a little bit of rapid fire.
Okay.
What does it mean to be an entrepreneur to you?
Free thoughts, but depressing moments.
Ooh. And how do you sustain longevity in the industry?
Value. Definitely always making sure that I'm trying to provide value in anything that I'm doing and saying. It's fulfilling some type of space that's void.
And when you speak about public policy and trust, how did you build your brand?
It's who I am. It's by definition who I am. It's when I say minority millennials, they automatically know. It's not clear. It's not confusing. This is literally who I am and who we are as an organization. And
is there a business mistake in the past that was a teaching moment for you as you try to achieve success?
Absolutely, a bunch of them. I lost my first company was Hard Rock Records, and it dissolved because I made thousands of mistakes. I got sued. The number one business mistake was quitting my job. I'll tell that all the time. It's the hugest mistake in my life.
And how do you stay focused?
I'm a spiritual man, so I definitely believe in God. So every morning I do pray and I keep my devotions. That's my centering. That's my alignment. And my wife, that's definitely my better half. She keeps me focused because I'm always going 1,000 miles per hour.
And what are some of your proudest accomplishments?
Getting married, honestly, is one of them. I definitely didn't think I was going to be able to pull that off. It was my high school sweetheart, so it kind of realigned me with who I am, my focus in a bad time. So I'm proud of that.
And if there was a book out there that really defined you and inspires you, what are you reading right now? What's speaking to you? I know you mentioned podcasts.
Yeah, there's a book called Deep Work. The author is Cal Newport. And so deep work is basically the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. And so what he's saying is that the ability to focus is going to be the number one valuable skill set in the 21st century because we're all over the place. So that to me would change my life.
Absolutely. And it seems like you're very focused, in deep thought. Mm-hmm. When you think about the past and you think about history and public policy and this change overall, if you had the opportunity to go back in time and change something in particular, what would that be?
I think if you want to really kind of get deep, to me it's always wondering with regards to segregation, if that could have been maybe articulated in a different way, because we look at the results now, did it really benefit communities? So I always think about that.
Absolutely. Segregation, Jim Crow, and just everything. Absolutely. People talk about slavery all the time, but they forget what came after.
Yeah.
Just overall, who inspires you on a daily basis?
It's a great question. Really, just people that are doing things. So many different people inspire me in different industries, if it's sports or politics. So I can't really name one person, but it's definitely people that do things when you can tell it's authentic and they get past the initial fear. It's like, I respect what you're doing because I know how hard that is. So it's not one specific person.
Yeah. And what's next for Minority Millennials?
Definitely research and advocacy. We want to be able to provide data and statistics for any minority millennial across Long Island for the human capital investment of Long Island. We want banks to be able to invest into this demographic because we are going to be the majority, and there's no data for us. There's nothing specifically for this cohort. It's always for millennials, and that's hugely different than minority millennials.
So metrics is key. Are you collecting the data? Are you building that and handling that research?
Yeah, we're right now in talks with a couple of different data collecting services that we're looking to partner with, that we're going to roll out for 2019. Yeah, absolutely.
So if someone wants to get involved and be a part of the team or come out to some of your events, how do people find you?
Really easy. Everything is at Minority Millennials. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, but it's at Minority Millennials on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our website. You can Google us. We come right up, actually, with the number one thing coming up on Google now. So that's basically everything.
And now, what are you doing to recruit more women on your team?
Focusing on more women empowered initiatives. Honestly, we did the celebrating women of power from Suffolk County and Nassau County, really Suffolk County, that kind of like would just parallel that interest from women that maybe wanted to get involved with policy, but really understanding what are their pain points, what are their problems, but also what do they want to see change in Long Island. So we're distracting that information as well.
And I know you said you're not only focused on, Suffolk County. So where do you see yourself taking Minority Millennial? Like, what's the next level for you?
Well, by definition, we are demographic. So this is something that can translate across states. We've already had people asking me to do that as far as different chapters, but we definitely just need to get focused on providing clear and clarified data and value for Long Island right now, because then we can take that model to any other state.
No, that's fantastic. You're doing great work, Daniel, and we're so happy to have you on our show today. We appreciate your time, your insight, and sharing your story, your vision with Long Island. You hear about, Vision Long Island. You are a part of the vision and changing public policy.
Oh, thank you. We got a lot of work to do.
Absolutely, and we're here to help you. I want to end with DB's philosophy. It's time to step into your power. Step into your power with Minority Millennials. We want to thank you for being with us today. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, along with our guest, Daniel Lloyd, and our co-host, Ray Schwetz. We are the producers of Tower Talk Business Radio. The creative director of Tower Talk is Rudy Breedy. This is an NCC Foundation Business Leaders Council production. Visit ncc.edu/WHPC for more information. Available on iHeartRadio as a podcast on iTunes, Android, Podcast, and Spreaker. You can also ask Alexa. Available daily. This has been the Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. We'll talk to you next week.